Buckle up, everybody, because the first 3 minutes will be fast. At GateSpace, we are industrializing how to move satellites in space. The space industry is currently undergoing a real renaissance. That's thanks to cost-effective rockets like SpaceX is building. We now have affordable means to get stuff into space. That enables more and more businesses to open up, to give us stuff like internet for remote locations, data on climate change, soon maybe also organs produced in space or space-based solar power. But while we now have good means to get stuff to space, our ways of moving around stuff in space are not sufficient when we think about larger amounts of satellites. And that is a problem. Without the so-called propulsion system, that is the subsystem that you need to move these things, the satellites take forever to reach their final orbit. When they are at the orbit, they are at risk of colliding with space junk, and at the end of their lifetime will become space junk themselves. So in a nutshell, everybody needs to move. But for space to be really commercially usable, we have to rethink these propulsion systems, make them less like Formula One cars and more like a Volkswagen. And this is exactly what we do at my startup. We develop a so-called propulsion system that is a simple system that you bolt onto your satellite that enables the satellite to move around from the first day to the last day. Very much like the motor in your car, it is affordable and available and very easy to use for the customer. What makes it different from the motor in your car is that it's not a set of components like a wheel and a motor and a gas tank, but it is an encapsulated system that bolts onto the outside of the satellite like a Lego brick that makes it very easy to integrate into satellites. And because this makes it compatible with a lot of different spacecrafts, we'll be able to produce these systems in series, drop the the cost by tenfold, sell them off the shelf, and make more and more businesses capable of actually starting a space mission. But that for us is just the beginning. We'll work on these steps next. After introducing our product to the market, we'll introduce an autopilot, so maneuvers like docking or evasion maneuvers will just be done automatically. And with more of these systems in space, we're capable of thinking about refueling. That means the way we handle propellant in space will be widely different. And after that, we're just targeting the low Earth orbits right now. After this first step, we'll think about the higher orbits, or maybe moving cargo to Moon or the Mars. Our team has currently 12 members, and I'm running out of time, so that's my startup pitch for now. What would usually happen next is a Q&A session. People would ask, how many projects did you already sell? Do you have customers? What does your market look like? But since this is a TEDx talk, we won't have a Q&A session right now. And since I'm here on my own accord, I can talk on a much more personal level. So hello, my name is Taras. I'm 25 years old. I didn't finish university, but instead I founded a space tech startup with the team I've been working on rocket engines with in my free time. When I was introduced to the TEDx event, I was asked, can you speak about why you do this? And the question of why seems to be really important. So I was thinking about this and backtracking to where this actually started. A few months ago, I looked through some of my stuff and I found this picture of a rocket I drew at about age 8. But when I was asking my mom, did I already had a huge fascination when I was a kid? She said, well, yes, you did like space, but you also liked fire trucks or police cars. So this is not where we find my inspirational why for why we're doing this. To actually see where this journey started, we have to fast forward to 2018. This is the point where I was 20 years old. I was in the middle of my mechanical engineering studies, and I was a bit fed up with all the theoretical courses. So I was trying to find practical ways to put the stuff I learned into practice. I joined the TU Wien space team, that is a student club that is completely organized by students at the TU Wien, where members would work on aerospace projects in their free time. So stuff like building experimental rockets for competitions, rocket engine, hydrogen-powered planes, satellites that might actually go to space at one point. And this club really changed a lot for me. I got into the beginner project that was called FIRST. It is the beginner project where a group of 2 to 3 people would work on a small model rocket for half a year. But instead of just building the rocket, as they told us, we wanted it to have a special feature. So we included the whistle that you heard right now. We learned how to 3D print, and it took forever to get this design working. We ended up just buying whistles from Amazon and sticking them to the end of the rocket, so it didn't really work out. It took hours to get all the marks, like the layers from the 3D print out of the airframe. And then at the end, right before the deadline, I took the rocket home to also give it a color code, and we designed a small logo on that. And as you saw, when launch day came, we were really excited about it. And 2 problems. First, we only filmed the launch rail, so you actually didn't see a lot of the rocket while it was in flight. And second, we actually wanted to capture the whistle, but instead we started cheering right when this rocket launched. So that was great. This small rocket was enough to get me really, really excited about building stuff, getting all of your energy into that, spending long nights and long hours into projects. And after this project, I joined the liquid propulsion group. That was a project that was still pretty new, where my colleagues were already working on rocket engines that combine 2 propellants. They are fed into a rocket engine, and then they're ignited, and that basically produces thrust. So a lot of things were happening over the years. I started to work with metal. I learned how to lathe myself, and I was producing the parts that my colleagues were spending hours in designing. Then I spent hours in building them, and then other colleagues spent hours in testing and also destroying these components. And I was also getting into the organizational part of the team. So I was starting to help people with sponsoring, and then later on also helped the team as its vice president. And there was a lot happening, and I was trying to find this one thing that to me was really, really fascinating, and I wanted to show this first before I go deeper in what that meant to work on this project. So Usain Bolt trained 4 years to run 9 seconds, and we were working on a rocket engine for 3 years for 8 seconds of testing. Natürlich habe ich es gesehen. There were talks about an American Rocketry Challenge, but while we were making plans, Corona hit. So we finally had time to get back to university and start talking with friends again, meeting family, getting back into our private life. But instead of doing that, we went back to the workshop and started working on this test stand that you saw there. That's a pretty big thing. It's a trailer, and we had the test stand on top of that. And you can imagine we did all the electronics ourselves, the structures ourselves. We built this thing together. Then we took it apart again, sent it to the guy who would coat the thing in this nice zinc coating. And then we put it back together again. We did a lot of testing. So there was a lot of stuff going on. We would spend nights at the workshop. This is something I love to remember. There's days where I wasn't home for 2 or 3 days because I would sleep at the workshop. Don't tell that to our university because they might not like that. And also we were cooking together, we were eating on top of our structure, and there was just a lot of energy that went into this, not just from me, but from 20, 30, 40 people at some point. And especially in those days, people were asking me, why do you do this, guys? Why would you sacrifice university? Why would you sacrifice your friends or your family? And I often found myself working alone as well. I loved working in a team, but at some point I needed to work alone as well. And it was really scary at some points because I wasn't really aware of what I needed to do to get this project done. I was also, of course, feeling bad about not seeing my friends and my family, but I wasn't forced to do any of this. My colleagues weren't either, and we weren't paid for it. So we obviously just enjoyed it. And And so when the project came to an end, the Base 11 Space Challenge, this American Rocket Challenge, wasn't happening. Nobody made it in time. And the colleagues that we were working with, they stopped working on the rest of the rocket again as well. So it was just the propulsion guys. And we also followed our motto. We boldly went where no student has gone before. This was literally our motto. And a lot of us finally hit the point where they completed a mission, and then they could go back to uni, to meeting friends, to meeting family, and just have time. But for some of us, this was not enough. We said this can't be it. And I was one of the guys who said, I want to do everything in my power to continue this project, whatever that would look like. So I would drag my then chief engineer to Bremen, to a space conference. We had a 12-hour train ride to just talk to people, and they generally liked what we were doing. We were building this bigger rocket engine, but it was quite a bit too big for what they were planning to do. So on the train ride back, my colleague miniaturized his concept for this engine and came up with a design. And that was already enough motivation to bring back to Austria to get more and more people on board of our project. So we ended up with 7 co-founders. And you can imagine we were again building a small private test facility, and then we started working on engines again. So in a way, things really didn't change. We now have quite a bit more budget, but you kind of need that when you work on space missions. But the hard work continues. So in a way, just to give you an example, lately I was in front of our office, and my colleagues in their 2 cars had just arrived from a test of our complete propulsion system, so we use 4 engines in that. And because it was the second test, it wasn't going too well, and it was already a pretty cold day. And everybody must have been exhausted, but when I looked into the window, everybody was smiling, and you could see that they're really excited about what they're doing. So before I forget about it, let's get back to the question of why. When I was talking to the TEDx guys over video call to just get the presentation a bit into some kind of form, thinking about the question of why became really painful for me. Because honestly speaking, I don't know why we do this. I have absolutely no clue why we do this. And I think the same is true for a lot of my colleagues. And funny enough, we don't really get this question that often anymore, because people, maybe they found out why we do this because we founded this company, and so we're in for the money. But I can tell you, I'm not in for the money. I'm not in for this great CV, because there must be way better ways to do that, honestly. I also don't do it for breaking a world record, because there's already people up there. And when it's late hours, I also don't really think about world peace or saving the climate, to be honest. So in the end, there might not really be maybe there is not a why for everything that we're doing. And when you have this inner feeling that just tells you to keep going, maybe it's a good idea to just do that and don't think about the why too much, and just tell people, why not? And I know I will keep going until I find out why I shouldn't.